My name is Sarah Hopkins. I'm a printmaker. I've been working as a printmaker for the last 35 years and I'm based in Swansea, and I work from my studio in Swansea and also from Swansea Print Workshop. I focus mainly on silkscreen printing, although I will experiment with many printmaking techniques, but that is my go-to medium. That's my medium of choice. So generally, I guess in the past my work has always come from the things that are around me. So I'm really interested in the urban landscape and the built-up environment. I'm really interested in sort of industrial structures as well, and I guess it's a lot to do with my heritage, about who I am, the influences of my parents' work. You know, both of my parents at one stage worked at the steelworks in Port Talbot, so that's been a real influence in my work. Heritage in general, I'd say, so whether they're objects that have been passed down through family. For me, responding to an object, they're things that I have an association with in some way. So things that are very personal to me, things that have been handed down through my family, through generations. They were once loved items by, you know, previous or older members of my family. So they were treasured items back then, and they've been handed down through generations. I think this has got quite a recent sort of area for me to explore, you know, the objects themselves. I mean, for example, the jugs. I have worked with them in the past, but more recently I've done a lot more work on them, particularly in the collaboration that I've done with Mohammed Atif Khan. I first met Atif when I project managed the Festival of Muslim Culture print project for Swansea Print Workshop. That was in 2006. I took a sabbatical from my role in the college. I was teaching at the time. I took a sabbatical to project manage this programme of events, and through that I met him. I worked with my colleague Samira Khan, and we brought the two artists from Pakistan over to be resident in Swansea, and had a wonderful time working with them, working with the community, working with schools and colleges, and learning from them. So I've retained contact and maintained that contact, but it's been online for 17 years. So I thought it would be a really good idea to reconnect with him physically and to collaborate in some way. So we came up with an idea about creating a collection of prints. I mean, he's a phenomenal printmaker, and he is an associate professor at the National College of Arts in Lahore, and I thought it would be really interesting for him to start some work, to create some work, and then to send it to me so I could finish it off, and vice versa. So I would start you know, with some objects or with an image of some sort, and then send that to him, and he would respond to it and complete the piece of work. So we made 16 pieces of work altogether. They're all editions of prints. Neither of us knew what we were going to do at the start, so it was a complete surprise. So when the work arrived, I opened it up, and then I saw the image that I had to respond to, and you know, for many of the pieces I didn't know how I was going to respond in the first instance, and there were others that were easier to respond to. The collaborative project that I did with Mohammed Atif Khan is called Diptych. Diptych meaning of two parts, two images next to each other. We started with some funding from the Welsh Arts Council and Arts International Wales, and I put a bid together to request that I work with Artif, and it was all about reconnecting after a very long time, 17 years of not seeing him, and we connected creatively to make this collaborative project happen. So it started off by us creating or deciding to create an edition of 16 separate pieces of work, but an edition of 10 of each. And the idea was that I would start 8, Artif would start 8, and then we would swap them over. I would complete 8 of his images, and then he would complete 8 of mine. I have done quite a lot of collaborative work with other artists in the past. I enjoy collaboration. It's wonderful actually sharing an experience like that. But all artists are very different, and they all work very differently to each other. And you know, it was a different experience again working with Artif. He has a completely different approach to me. The way we work is very different. So I guess it teaches you to be incredibly tolerant, patient. I like instant results, and he takes a lot more time to think about things and to create his work. So it was really interesting the way that it all came together. And the whole project was enhanced by the fact that I was able to go to Pakistan to be there for the launch of the exhibition in Lahore, and then similarly for him to come to Swansea and be present at the launch of the exhibition at the university was also wonderful. The process of collaboration has certainly resulted in the fact that I've explored different avenues of work. So being presented with an image that have to second guess what it is. For example, one of the images that Artif sent me was of the reflection of a mosque in water, and that's what I assumed that it was. And I had to find a way of responding to that, which was quite challenging. That particular piece of work, he'd taken more than half of the sheet of paper, and so it was very difficult to think about what I could do, what I could place in the top half or the top part of that print. And you know, it took weeks and weeks of deliberation of how I was going to respond, and the way I responded was not what I would have usually done. You know, that I wouldn't have responded in that way perhaps before the collaboration. So what I actually did, one day I was walking on the beach down on the front in Swansea, and the sea was like a mill pond, and somebody was walking behind me and threw a stick for a dog, and the seabirds just took off, and the shapes and the shadows, the reflections from the birds in the water rippled. There was all this sort of pattern in the sea, and it just reminded me of the image that he'd sent. Of course, the birds don't really have any relation to the mosque itself, but it was the whole you know, concept of the reflection and the movement of the birds against the movement of the ripples of the water that he'd sent. So and then that image actually worked compositionally. I felt that it was really important. It wasn't just about responding to the work with an image. The whole thing had to work and hold together as a collective. I think also the work takes on completely different meanings when you've got two separate things that come together. I think clearly there is a dialogue between the two cultures, looking at the visual language, the imagery that's created. There's one piece that is springing to mind. I created an image of a Welsh blanket. This Welsh blanket was on my bed as a child. It's a really itchy, scratchy blanket, so I had a bit of a love-hate relationship with it. I presented that to him. He used this blanket, which was sort of hanging from the top half of the paper. He used it as a curtain, and he hid a female figure halfway behind the blanket and put a male figure in the front, so there was a conversation that was going on between them, and then at the bottom part of the print he'd hand stamped a pattern which reflected the patterns in the Welsh blanket, and they're made up of flies. Again, just making reference to the geometric patterns that are in both of our cultures, in Islamic art and also in, you know, traditional Welsh blankets. We worked together for about 12 months, just short of 12 months on this particular project. And we have the next stage of the project now will be to develop this a little further. We're going to open up this sort of model of collaboration and apply it to working with undergraduates and young graduates. So what we'd really like to do is to find 10 students or graduates from Wales and 10 from Pakistan, and then to work with them to start the same process where they are creating a piece of work, and then we're going to get them to swap so that they too can respond to each other's work. And we have planned a big exhibition at the end of that in 2024, where we can see both the work that I did with Artif and the work of the participants as well. I have to work in an environment that's really quiet. I find it very difficult to concentrate if there's any noise at all. So I just like to work in silence, and I just like to make sure that the room is completely clean and tidy. It's a bit strange really. I think it's being a printmaker. Everything has just got to be in order so that I can work through the process, which is like a really methodical sort of process. One thing's for sure, and that is this diptych project. It's taken a lot of time to sort of really think about what I'm doing, think about the sort of images that I'm creating, and because of the way I work, which is very much I treat printmaking almost like painting, in that I build up layers. I hand cut paper stencils and I build them layer on top of layer on top of layer until I'm happy with the image. And if I don't like a layer, I'll print over it. And so the image builds and it evolves. So I don't have a set sort of, oh, this image is going to be 14 layers of printing. It just happens, and when it's done, it's done. So some of the images that I created for diptych were, you know, some of them were sort of 5 layers, and then others were 25 layers. So it's incredibly time consuming. But I'm thrilled. I'm thrilled with the work, and I'm thrilled also with the way that Artif has responded to the images I've given him.